The Bund comprises some 20 buildings in a line running from north to south, divided in the middle by Nanjing Road, which goes from east to west. These two are so close together that when you walk between them, you can reach out and touch both sides. On the left was the Yokohama Specie Bank, one of the leading trade banks of Japan. On my right, the Bank of China, which has occupied this building since 1937. That was the year that marked the start of the Sino-Japanese War, which meant that for the Bank of China, the enemy was right next door. And alongside the military conflict, a financial struggle developed. On July the 7th, 1937, the Japanese army staged a provocation at Lugochao on the outskirts of Beiping, known to foreigners as the Marco Polo Bridge. It marked the start of years of bloody conflict throughout China, culminating in the Pacific War. When the fighting reached Shanghai in August, the United States, Britain, France and other Western countries were still officially neutral, so the international settlement and the French concession remained outside the war zone. A local doctor recalling that time wrote that war on the battlefield was fought with weapons and caused the loss of human life. Away from the battlefield, it was fought with financial instruments and caused economic devastation. For Japan, one such instrument was the dissemination of counterfeit money, which it shipped in from Manchukuo, the puppet state it had established in Manchuria, and distributed through a number of Chinese private banks doing business in the Wusong Road, Minhang Road, Xihuade and Miller Road areas. The Bankers Association issued a strong statement urging people to avoid the counterfeit money. A second Japanese ploy was to try to force the population to convert their money into military banknotes issued by the Japanese army. In wartime, to issue military currency isn't that unusual. Many other countries have done so for the use of their armies to prevent an outflow of their own money. But the Japanese went further. They used military notes to wage economic war. The Sichuan Road Bridge, just behind me, used to be an important crossing point from the international settlement to the Shanghai North Railway Station. The station was in the Chinese city, and if you wanted to buy a train ticket there, the Japanese insisted that you pay with their army money. So a black market developed here, beside the bridge, to exchange military notes for Chinese currency. The black market rate was that to buy 1 yuan in military currency, you had to pay 1 yuan 3 jiao in legal tender. The sellers had a profit margin of 5 to 7 fun, and in the early days of the war, the military notes had no serial numbers, so there was no way of telling how much army currency had been issued. As the Japanese attack progressed, the use of military notes was imposed on all the occupied areas. Before the war, most of the nationalist government's financial authorities had their headquarters in Shanghai. In August 1937, when the Japanese attacked, a coordination bureau was set up by the state-owned banks and the trust and postal systems to put their credit and loan business on a war footing. After the city was occupied in November, these agencies were relocated to the interior. But the Shanghai Bankers Association continued to play an important role in resisting the occupying forces' directives.
您看，这是当时上海银行工会和这个国民政府它的这个交流的函电。 南京国民政府呢，由于这个首都的失守，所以他们已经从汉口再一直迁到了重庆。这些函电里边呢，它所反映的意思呢，就是要求银行工会呢是拒绝和日本人以及北方的傀儡政府合作，同时呢要防止这个就是北方的伪币在上海市场的流通。那么当时留守在上海的银行工会的这些负责人呢，是非常积极地执行了这个重庆方面的指令。那么他们是利用租界呢来对抗日本人。
So the settlement must have been pretty important to the nationalists in the early years of the war. I mean, it was also the only channel open between Shanghai and the outside world, and that must have been extremely useful for them.
对您说的这个呢，我认为是很有道理的，因为在1941年12月太平洋战争爆发之前呢，上海呢是中国唯一一个口岸可以和西方进行贸易的往来，而且呢，国民政府呢也认为这个上海这样一个特殊的这个，特别是租界的存在，这样特殊的一个地位的话呢，是有利于接收对外的援助。那么对于抗日战争呢，它就是说我们持续下去呢是非常有积极意义的。
Even the Chinese currency, the legal tender, had to be brought in through the international settlement. Previously, it had been ordered direct through specialist printing houses abroad. But with the Japanese blockading the coast, the Bank of China had to ask HSBC and the Standard Chartered Bank to import banknotes on its behalf. As though that weren't difficult enough, matters were soon complicated still further because of a split in the nationalist ranks. In March 1940, the Kuomintang's nominal vice president and former rival to Chiang Kai-shek, Wang Jingwei, defected to Japan and established himself in Nanjing at the head of a Japanese-backed government, which in due course announced the creation of its own monetary authority, the so-called Central Reserve Bank. In January 1941, Wang's bank took over the Bank of China building on the Bund, which was declared to be the Reserve Bank's Shanghai branch, and began issuing yet another currency, Central Reserve notes, which Wang and his Japanese patrons demanded should replace the nationalists' old legal tender. For the public at large, and for bank employees, life was about to become even more difficult.
这里啊，是中国银行职工的一个宿舍区。抗战前呢，它有花园，有俱乐部，有学校，有诊所，还有呢理发店、图书馆，甚至餐厅，包括运动场。这是中国啊当时最早有社区概念的一个住宅区。
Before the war, the bank staff had a pretty good life here.
对啊，当时生活在这里的人呢，生活是非常好的。可是呢，战争啊，改变了一切。
How did they react to the issuance of these Central Reserve notes by Wang Jingwei's government? Because after all, that meant they were really working for the Japanese.
对，这就是我为什么要带你到这里来的一个原因。当时呢，为了抵制那个中储券，就在这个中航别业里，有128个员工遭到了绑架。
When did that happen?
那是在1941年的3月份。当时啊，为了这个针对这个银行方面呢，已经发生了多起的枪杀案件。然后这里呢，128个这个员工呢，后来被鉴别以后，有5个人不是中航的，把他放掉了，其他的人呢，就抓了关了整整有半个多月。后来经过多方营救，才得到了这个释放。但是呢，还有2位重要的银行的这个主任这一级的官员啊，被枪杀了。
Despite the pressure, resistance continued. The international settlement, isolated though it was, continued to play its role. And the power of the market proved remarkably resilient there. The growing numbers of refugees caused house prices to rise. Capital flowed into the settlement from the occupied areas, both to promote the recovery of the manufacturing sector and for speculation on the foreign exchange and stock markets. As so often in wartime, amid the misery, there was hedonism. In December 1941, after Pearl Harbor, this artificial interlude came to an end. The foreign concessions were overrun, the British and American banks were seized as enemy property. At HSBC's head office at number 12 the Bund, the Japanese flag replaced the Union Jack. Financial activity came to a standstill. Foreigners were interned in Japanese-run camps. 3 more long years would pass before the anti-Japanese war would come to an end.